The artillery sounds were everywhere, not booming so much as thrumming, a dense physical vibration. That vibration turned teeth to gravel and thoughts to static during the overture to the battle. This was the overture to the Second Battle of Fallujah, known formally as Operation Phantom Fury. It was known unofficially among the ground troops as the world's loudest concrete dust factory. The Point Man, a Marine named Sergeant Hector Heck Rodriguez, whose primary motivation was not patriotism. He had the faint, shimmering hope of getting a hot shower someday as he stepped away from the berm. He stepped away from the reinforced railway berm that marked the northern border of the city. RCT-1 was going in first, and Heck had the distinct honor of being the first human being to interact. He was the first to try and interact with this urban labyrinth since the pre-assault bombardment. The bombardment had sterilized every non-human surface before the team paused by a doorframe. Its cheap wood was splintered, but still stubbornly attached to the resilient Iraqi cement. Adrenaline, that sharp electric spike, coursed through Heck as he held his breath inside the room. An insurgent was praying, clutching a grenade, determined that this time history would write a script. Heck racked his M1014 shotgun, making the sound of mechanical finality, known as clack-clack. The insurgent pulled his pin, making the sound of tiny metallic impatience, known as shk-click. A voice crackled sharply over Heck's headset, cutting through the concussive rhythm of distant fire. Pointman, hold. Did you calculate the external structural integrity before we proceed? We do not want to waste the C4 on an easy kick-in. Sergeant, so please tell me your status now. Heck slumped infinitesimally against the door frame and said, "Negative, Lieutenant," to the radio. I was going for the classic breach, which is fiscally irresponsible according to the lieutenant. We are aiming for optimized ordnance expenditure, so utilize the Bangalore torpedo for a reason. Sir, it is a standard residential front door, and the Bangalore is for clearing barbed wire. What is a booby trap, Rodriguez, if not a personalized internal minefield waiting for us? Make the door earn the right to fall down and breach smart, not hard, using the equipment. Heck sighed a breath that smelled faintly of diesel and disappointment as he stood there, waiting. They wanted him to meticulously disassemble the door, using the most expensive specialized equipment. This was just in case some disgruntled accountant in Tampa, Florida, was auditing his supply manifest. We are going with the shape charge on the hinges, followed by fragmentation grenade dispersal, then standard small arms suppression upon entry, just for a single room, according to orders. The lieutenant purred that it sounds like a professional use of taxpayer dollars for the mission. The door did not blast open. It was surgically sheared, followed by the wet thump of a grenade. Then came the deafening, pointless roar of suppressed automatic fire filling the small room. The small, concrete living room was now coated in a fine, white film of gypsum and pulverized dust. Heck muttered while wiping dust from his goggles that it was a lot of noise for just one guy. The Second Battle of Fallujah quickly became less of a historical event and more of a project. It was a protracted, deeply irritating home renovation project gone catastrophically wrong. The coalition was a vast, expensive assembly of U.S. Marines and armored battalions in the city. The stoic Scots of the Black Watch and the freshly minted Iraqi security forces were present. They outnumbered the insurgents by a significant margin, but numbers meant nothing in this fight. Numbers meant nothing when fighting a decentralized enemy, protected by walls built for nuclear winter. By day 3, Sergeant Barnes had already developed an unhealthy relationship with the architecture. Barnes grumbled, tapping the wall of a completely empty bedroom with his helmet. Look at this. Solid poured concrete 3 feet thick is like they designed these places to absorb a shell. They absorb a 105mm shell and then mildly inconvenience you with dust in the room. Private First Class Miller hunched over a water bottle he was attempting to filter for the 4th time. They just built them out of the only material that can survive the heat and us, said Miller. The movement was slow, measured, and maddening, as the insurgents were ghosts who lived in the bones. They left behind one deadly constant, called the IED, which made the city actively hostile to us. Fallujah was not just booby-trapped. It was actively hostile. A municipal funhouse for the troops. Every appliance, every child's toy, and every abandoned refrigerator hid a cocktail of shrapnel. After 4 days of grinding advances, the operational tempo was deemed unacceptable by the TA. The reports filtering back were monotonous. House cleared, negative contact, and 2 IEDs detonated. Something had to change, as the objective was the city center and the Jolan district mosque. The Makati Mosque was the perceived hub of the insurgency, so they had to move faster now. On the morning of November 11th, the legendary defining order was relayed down the chain of command. It was a bureaucratic decree of pure, unadulterated absurdity that resonated across the airwaves. The new standing order was simple. Enter every room with a boom was the command given to them. The implication was clear. No more tedious door kicking and no more cautious peeking around corners. If a door was closed, it was suspicious. And if it was suspicious, it was dangerous to the squad. If it was dangerous, it needed to be exploded immediately, according to the new standing order. Sergeant Barnes, the resident expert in things that go loud, wept tears of joy into his detonating cord. Barnes declared to a stunned PFC Miller that this is how we achieve kinetic superiority today. We are not fighting insurgents anymore, Miller. We are fighting potential energy in the hallway. Miller stared at the 2 meters of detonation cord Barnes was meticulously taping across the door. Sarge, that is just a linen closet, and it probably contains exactly 0 Jordanian jihadists. Ah, but that is where you are wrong, Private said Barnes, with eyes gleaming with manic intensity. The doctrine is not enter every room containing a threat with a boom. It is every single room. This is preventative ordnance use, reducing the statistical probability of ambush by the enemy. We are eliminating all structural integrity that might conceal intent within the building walls. Think of the paperwork if we missed a room because command would have a fit about the process. We get paid the same whether it is a Zarqawi lieutenant or a role of empty Sharman Miller. Safety first and boom first, Barnes said, giving the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Send it. The pantry door vaporized, and the explosion contained within the small space sounded terrifying. It sounded like a concrete elephant sneezing into a metal bucket, creating a violent plume of dust. When the cloud cleared, the tiny linen closet was exposed, empty, save for a few wire hangers. A stray, very confused tabby cat had presumably failed to escape during the civilian exodus. The cat blinked slowly at the smoking doorway, then sneezed, thoroughly disgusted by the dust. See, Miller, Barnes said, proudly shaking the debris off his helmet. Threat neutralized. Right now. Now mark the room. Clear EOD assisted. And let us get the charges ready for the bathroom door. This was the rhythm of Operation Phantom Fury, as the coalition advanced not by stealth tactics. They did not use superior tactics, but advanced by brute acoustic force throughout the whole city. The Marines were transformed into an army of high-end, heavily armed demolition workers in town. They were meticulously erasing Fallujah, one interior space at a time, using Mk-153 rocket launchers. They tossed grenades into kitchens before mopping up the resilient ceramic tile fragments later. The constant, repetitive, and wasteful expenditure of high explosives began to take a strange toll. I just blew up a microwave oven, Heck Rodriguez reported, sounding profoundly defeated to the leader. It was a perfectly good 800-watt microwave blown up with a stick of C4, and we found nothing. The biggest threat now was not the insurgents, who were still hiding, still lethal, but hard to find. It was the pervasive, blinding, agonizingly persistent concrete dust that coated everything around. As night fell on November 11th, the northern half of the city had technically fallen to the Marines. The Marines were entrenched in thousands of empty, dust-choked, bomb-damaged houses in the city. PFC Miller found a spot in the wreckage of what looked like a sturdy bedroom missing a wall. It was missing a structural wall thanks to an earlier RPG attack, and he tried to get some sleep. The sound of artillery continued softening up targets further south as the fire had subsided. A tense, brittle silence descended, thick with the smell of cordite and shattered masonry nearby. That silence lasted approximately 5 minutes, and then the psychological warfare began again. Fallujah, the city of mosques, possessed over 200 of them, and targeting them was a war crime. The insurgents had wisely utilized them not just for hiding weapons, but for broadcasting noise. Suddenly, massive loudspeakers mounted on the towering minarets of the central mosques roared. It was a torrent of incessant, amplified chants, screaming exhortations to jihad and rhythmic curses. The volume was astronomical, as the acoustics of the tightly packed city amplifying the cacophony. It turned the sound into a singular, mind-rending vibration that Miller shoved his fingers into. "They are trying to break us," Sergeant Barnes said flatly, adjusting his helmet so it covered his face. "They know we cannot sleep through that." But the American response was swift and coordinated. From the nearby checkpoint, a U.S. Army Humvee, customized with a massive jury-rigged sound system. It looked like it had been salvaged from a defunct stadium concert and rolled onto the street. This vehicle, nicknamed the Sound Barrier, was driven by a specialist known as Urban Tactical DJ. The insurgents' solemn, terrifying broadcast was instantly drowned out by abrasive assault. The Humvee began its nightly loop with the opening strains of Guns N' Roses' Welcome to the Jungle. It was immediately followed by the notorious screeching, clicking sound of the Predator alien. Then a quick transition to AC/DC's Hell's Bells, played at a decibel level that threatened the walls. "Oh God, not the Predator sound again," Miller groaned, burying his head under his flak jacket. Psychological countermeasures. Private Barnes yelled over the din of Axl Rose's screaming voice. "They blast their doom chants, so we blast existential dread mixed with terrible 80s arena rock." The night became a surreal, cacophonous opera with a 1,000-year-old tradition of religious chants. It battled the synthesized sounds of 20th century Hollywood monster movies and drunken rock anthems. Miller realized he would not sleep. He would merely pass out from a temporary auditory shutdown. The Humvee circled the block, the tires crunching over the dust and debris created by Barnes. It effectively made the entire city center a localized speaker cabinet for the urban DJ battle. He wondered if the stray tabby cat, currently hiding in the freshly blown-up pantry, was listening. It was probably experiencing the urban DJ battle because it was impossible not to experience it. As 3 a.m. approached, the Humvee switched tracks, pumping out an aggressively optimistic blast. It was a blast of Toby Keith, only to be answered by the insurgents with a burst of Arabic chanting. Miller pulled out his dusty notebook, a small comfort, as he had started keeping a log of things. He logged the most ridiculous things he had seen blown up, like the pantry and the romance novel. November 11th. Pantry clear. 1 cat found. Worn copy of romance novel. Clear toilet tank. Positive IED. Kitchen cabinet top right. Clear large bag of dusty lentils was the last entry in the notebook. He closed his eyes. The image of Barnes meticulously placing plastic explosives swirling behind. Barnes was placing explosives on a refrigerator door swirling behind his eyelids as he slept. The sun rose on November 12th, dragging itself over the horizon and illuminating a broken city. It looked like it had been vigorously attacked by an army of overly enthusiastic interior designers. The noise finally began to abate. The Humvee had returned to the checkpoint and minarets were silent. They were conserving energy for the next night's performance, as the new day brought the slog. The command was doubling down every closed door, and every shadowed closet was a legitimate target. The city center was being approached with a level of preemptive demolition unparalleled in war. They estimate 1 in 20 houses contains hostile troops, the platoon LT informed them today, which means we treat all 20 houses like they contain troops, and every room like a trap. As they geared up, Barnes was already measuring out flexible charge cord for the Jolan district. Maximum destruction authorized. As I heard a rumor, there is a closet in one of these houses. It might actually contain a whole shelf, so we might need a Mark 19 grenade launcher for that. Miller nodded numbly. His eardrums felt permanently stretched, and he tasted nothing but cement. He had officially run out of clean socks as they approached their first target of the day. It was a larger 3-story concrete dwelling, suspiciously quiet. So the point man blasted the door. The team entered weapons ready, moving through the dusty, empty living room following the orders. Miller, you and Barnes take the staircase and the second floor. And remember the standing order. Enter every room with a boom, sir. Loud and proud, Miller muttered, hefting a breaching charge kit. Upstairs, the house was a labyrinth of closed doors, so Barnes, professionally ecstatic, got to work. He worked immediately on the first bedroom. Boom, empty. The next door. Boom, empty. Down the hall. Suddenly, as they moved down the hall, Miller spotted a small, dark shadow darting across the floor. It vanished beneath a half-shattered wooden dresser, so Miller hissed movement, contact low. Barnes immediately slammed a prepped charge against a closed door across the hall, yelling, Negative, Miller. Stick to the objective. If there is movement, they are trying to distract us. Sarge, it is not structural. It is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. The adjacent bedroom door exploded. Miller coughed, squinting through the debris as the clouds settled, revealing the cause of movement. It emerged from under the dresser and was the tabby cat from the day before, following the sound. The cat looked terrified, slightly singed, and profoundly confused about why its new spot was loud. There he is, Barnes said, lowering his weapon. That is the 3rd time we have encountered that menace. We should probably give him a code name like Paperwork, because this will be a nightmare to explain. Barnes looked genuinely pained, saying, You are right. We used 2 breaching charges on a cat. It was a cat relocation effort. But hey, mission success. Now we have got to get to the mosque. According to this map, there are 15 closets, 9 bathrooms, and 1 sauna on the way to boom.
Go, get moving!
Time to boom and scoot. Miller, time to boom and scoot. As they pressed deeper into the Jolan district, Fallujah was being systematically emptied, room by room, and destroyed boom by boom in the battle. They were winning the battle, but every victory sounded like a catastrophic loss for the residents. Miller sighed, pulling out his notebook to log the latest expenditure of a breaching charge closet. It was clear. 1 persistent feline relocated. He knew that somewhere, Zarqawi was watching this. The day stretched ahead, an infinite vista of closed doors waiting to be violently opened by them. Miller realized the real threat was not death. It was going completely deaf and dying from dust. He was dying from concrete lung, while filing reports on the disappearance of countless cubic yards.
We're rocking this city tonight.
The sound of freedom, he thought, was not silence. It was just an overwhelming, ridiculous noise. It was explosive noise, followed by an administrative headache. And tomorrow night, the predator returns.